Welcome to the Jaybe show on Revolutionary Blackout Network. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. Beautiful Sunday to all of you. Good to see you. Come on in. Welcome. Have a seat. I hope you guys grab yourself a snack and something to drink. It is going to be a very informative show for you guys today. But just to let you guys know, you guys can catch me here on Revolutionary Blackout Network every Sunday and Thursday here for the Jaybe show, and then also for the Savvy and Jaybe show on Thursdays. And then you can also follow me on my channel, on the Jaybe Font channel. That's also linked in the description down below. So if you guys have not already, go ahead and give a like to the stream. This helps us out to be able to reach more people. So thank you so very much for that. Also, by the way, if you guys have not, you guys can actually join our mailing list at revolutionaryblackout.substack.com so you guys get email notifications whenever we go live. Also, if you guys would like to, you guys can also email us at revolutionaryblackout@outlook.com. This is so if you guys have any stories you guys would like to submit or get in contact with us, then you guys have that there as well. So thank you very much for that. So good to see all of you here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is beautiful Sunday. It is the Sunday before Memorial Day. And so for those of you who may celebrate, happy Memorial Day weekend. And so this is going to be a interesting show. We're going to be covering a couple stories. But before we get into that, we're going to get into the chat and say hello to some of the peeps. And then after that, we will get into the show. All right. So we're going to start off with Dabby Dabs coming in. Dabby Dabs says, at fam, hey, Dabby Dabs. All right. We have Terry Connolly coming in saying, greetings, comrades. Good to see you. Terry Connolly coming in here. CBC voter coming in saying happy Sunday at JB. Good to see you here. We have Arcane Eclectic says, yo, JB, my first live since your surgery. Looking amazing, brother. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's good to see you. Nice to have you in here as well. Let's check to see if we have anybody on the Rockvin side saying hello. People are a little bit quiet, but we're saying hello to them anyway, since they're there. Also, hello to everybody that's watching on Rumble too. All right. So what are we going to be talking about today? Well, we're going to start off with one of the heavier topics that I'm going to talk about today. And this one is actually going to be very interesting, especially since it has to do with the criminal justice system. And I think this is absolutely necessary because let's get into it, and then I'll start my intro. So we have two shows that we're going to talk about. Later in the show today, we're going to be talking about beware of this trick. So we're going to be talking about what the trick is, and it's done by politicians. And yes, that is the mayor of Orlando. His name is John Buddy Dyer. And so he is there because he has played this trick on the citizens of Orlando. And I want to use what he did as a teachable moment for those of us who are clinging to the vestiges of the Republican and Democratic parties. Excuse me. And then, but first, we're going to be talking about a very serious subject about girls and girls that are in danger within this country. And so I want to get into this story because these are the girls that get neglected all the time. But guess what? We're not doing it here. We're not neglecting them. The criminal justice system is ripe with corruption. And because of that, it places many people in danger, especially the people who are the most marginalized among us. And so I think it's important that we focus on these, but especially the ones who seem to be overlooked within our society. And these are the young girls that are subject to the criminal justice system that are minors. You see, we talk a lot about saving our children, but when it comes to the ones that are locked away, we tend to forget, especially the ones that are black and brown. And so I want to get into this story. This came out of the Orlando Sentinel, and I feel that this is a absolutely necessary topic to get into. Um, and also, what I will do is I will also be giving you guys the link to this article. This is going to be the archived version of the article, so you guys won't have to go through a paywall in order to see it. But I do believe that this is a worthy topic. And while, yes, boys are especially subject to this because we are overrepresented, especially black and brown boys are overrepresented in the criminal justice system. We also cannot neglect our girls as well. And so I think that this is one of the more important topics to discuss as well. Fortunately, I don't have any young women that I know of that have been through the criminal justice system as a minor. But you never know. We all can come in contact with them some way, in one shape or another. So let me share this article. This is out of the Orlando Sentinel. And it says, girls confined to box if they fought sex abuse at Florida Youth Center, lawsuit says. So let's get into this article, and we shall go through this. So it says, of multiple employees accused of sexual abuse at a now closed Florida Juvenile Justice Center, a lawsuit brought by 5 survivors says that one staffer had girls who objected to abuse or threatened to expose it confined to what was nicknamed the box. The small cement room was used as a form of punishment at the former Milton Girls Juvenile Residential Facility in Santa Rosa County, located in the Florida Panhandle. Guards and other employees stripped girls and put them in the box of their clothing, leaving them naked and without blankets in the room, and lacked a sink and toilet, according to a complaint filed April 18th. It says one of the women suing over sexual abuse she endured recalls how she was once locked in the box for more than 2 weeks by an employee accused of sexually assaulting her about 4 or 5 separate times. So this is a very serious subject. And when we talk about the criminal justice system and white supremacy, I'm not saying that this is happening only to black and brown girls, but what I'm saying is that these young women who are either as class and race, they are neglected, they're not believed, right? They're subject to abuse because we're taught as a society that they are less trustworthy, that they're less credible. All because, they were delinquents. So they're in there, so they're probably going to lie anyway just to get out. When in reality, these things are actually happening. And so, yes, this is talking about a lawsuit that is happening now to girls that has happened 2 years ago. But who's to say this still isn't happening today? And everybody wants to talk about, oh my God, human trafficking and the illegals bringing people across the border. What about the same people who are your neighbors that are abusing girls and boys in juvenile detention centers here on this very soil? What about them? Nothing? I don't hear anybody talking about this. And yet, crickets. And when you have a system that is built on, number one, it's not built on restorative justice. Number two, a lot of times, when you don't have a system where it upholds the material conditions of people, then they start to get into things, they start to get into trouble. They also become victims of trauma, and then they act out according to that trauma. And so therefore they end up in the system instead of actually fixing, the foundation so that we won't have more of them. We treat the symptoms instead of the cause. And so then this creates a perpetual cycle of abuse that continuously happens to our girls and our boys when in the system. And so people don't want to talk about it, or people don't want to deal with it because they think in their mind, well, they're just inherently bad. Just, move them out the way, move them to the side. They're not worth it. And so this is what we're doing to them. We are literally in a system that creates out of whack mentally and emotionally human beings that we now have to deal with on a societal basis because the system itself has created them so that emotionally and mentally they can't deal. And honestly, we're not supposed to deal with it. And so they're reacting to a system that is inhumane. And so what do? We lock them away instead of actually discovering, why did you do the things you do? What was the motivating factor? What is the mitigating circumstances that put you in there? And then on top of that, we're not safeguarding them while they're in the system. We're here trying to protect people from them, but who's trying to protect them from the predators that are working at these institutions? Let's continue. She is joined by 5 other women in the lawsuit against the Gulf Coast Treatment Center, the private company contracted by the state to run the facility, which closed in December of 2012 in the wake of severe sexual misconduct reports in criminal investigations. Let me stop here. So it says the private company contracted by the state to run the facility. I want to emphasize this really quick. This is what happens when you get the public-private partnerships. Somebody ends up getting, messed over. And who ends up getting, messed over is, in this case, our girls. Because these companies, their focus is not on rehabilitation, restorative justice. No, it's focused on profit. Therefore, it doesn't matter what happens to these girls, as long as they keep those juvenile detention centers filled. That's all that matters. So what do? They pressure the governments so that they can have these detention centers to keep these filled. They'll even pressure judges and give them kickbacks and things like that in order to, keep, replenishing. And then when you have a system that thrives on keeping a majority of the people either impoverished or barely being able to survive, well, then now you have systems where it perpetuates, more violence, more negative outcomes for these kids. And so what happens is they are living in situations where crimes of opportunity and crimes of desperation are running rampant. And so they're taking advantage of that in order to make a quick buck because they're not safeguarding the very people who they're supposed to also protect. All right, let's continue. Harrowing accounts of the 5 women experiences from what they were all younger than 16 are detailed in the filing, including one woman's accounts of abuse by Ernest Parker, who is now serving a 25-year prison sentence. Parker, a former medical technician for the facility, was charged with 16 counts of sexual battery, the Miami Herald reported in 2017. 9 girls reported Parker had abused them, according to Miami Herald report. The girls, along with other residents, were considered juvenile delinquents and were supposed to receive counseling and rehabilitation services while at the facility. Now, the lawsuit, first reported by the Pensacola News Journal, represents a critical step towards justice and accountability. That's from the attorney Chris Klotz. Said that these brave young women have endured unimaginable trauma, and it's our solemn responsibility to ensure their voices are heard and their trauma is met with justice and compassion. See, this is the crazy part, right? Because no doubt most of these young girls, if not all of them, have experienced trauma outside of the walls of that detention facility. And then by the time they reach the detention facility, they're subject to even more trauma after that. And so while you're saying, oh, well, we're trying to rehabilitate them so they'll be productive members of society, they're being abused while in there. So then by the time they get out, then guess what? They're also going to act on that trauma even further and then commit more crimes out there. And then they're back into the system. But now they're adults and now they're going to be serving in prison. So then the recidivism rate goes up. Why? Because you didn't take the time to be able to truly rehabilitate these young women. You allowed them to be subject to, pigs who were there. All because, and you look the other way. You look the other way because you wanted to make money. And the politicians look the other way because they wanted that money from these companies because they needed that political donations. And also it gives them an excuse to say, well, look, we're trying to clean up the streets. Look, we're providing more police, more juvenile detention centers, more resources in that way so that they can lower the crime rate, right? But how does that make any sense when you're having crimes committed against the people who you're trying to rehabilitate? And this all goes back to capitalism, right? Because a lot of these private companies, ultimately, the people don't matter. And they're supposed to be serving the people, but they don't matter at all. Including the ones who are incarcerated. Also named as a defendant in the filing is Universal Health Services, the parent company of Gulf Coast Treatment Center, which had a contract with the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice to manage the Melton facility. Joseph McHale, an attorney for the Gulf Coast Treatment Center, declined McClatchy News' request for comment. Universal Health Services and the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice did not return requests for comment. Of course they didn't. It says Klotz in the complaint wrote that these repeated incidents of sexual battery and the plaintiffs involved, and you guys can read that there, and were committed by employees, actors, and agents of the defendants. So, yes, this was happening to minors in our juvenile detention centers. Minors. Just imagine if that were your daughter, your sister, your niece. Imagine if that was your cousin. Just think about it. How would you feel about this system? Is it really rehabilitative? Or is it just a means for them to make money? And when we talk about defunding the police, we're not just talking about defunding the police, we're also talking about taking funding away from these institutions, these correctional institutions that don't actually offer true correction and rehabilitation. They're just punishments that are there to further traumatize the people and then cause them to be so messed up in the head that they end up coming back so that they can use them again. So on one side, they're being used for money, and the other side, they're being used for their bodies. And that's part of the system. Now, one of the things that I wanted to also direct attention to, and we'll get back to the article in a second, was I was curious about the ownership of this company, Universal Health Services. Sounds very innocuous, right? Universal Health Services. That doesn't sound anything out of the ordinary. But here's the shareholders. Universal Health Services, Inc., right? So this is Universal Health Services, right? And it talks about behavioral health services, right? Which could also include juvenile detention centers and things like that, right? So here is the executive committee. So yeah, the CEO is Mark Miller. And CFOs, and you have the chairman. Here's your shareholders. Take a look. Who do you see there? Shareholders. First one is Vanguard. 12.09% of ownership. First Eagle Investment Management, then BlackRock, then State Street, and then Fidelity Management and Research. Any wonder why it's the usual suspects? It's the usual suspects that we always see and hear about that actually are the owners of even facilities within our criminal justice system. And they will run these juvenile detention centers. And then once they run them, who are they getting money from? They're getting money from our governments. And by our state government, that means they're getting our tax dollars. And then our tax dollars are literally paying for people to sexually assault our girls in those facilities. That's what that's where your taxes are going. Think about it. You're paying all that money for what? Just so that they can abuse? And if this is happening to girls in juvenile detention centers, you know it's also happening to boys in juvenile detention centers. If it's happening to boys in juvenile detention centers, then guess what's happening in women prisons? And if it's happening in women prisons, then guess what's happening in men's prisons? So there you go. And it's all one big money-making wheel for the corporate powers. And these same corporate powers are the same people that have our politicians by the throat and are telling them, hey, this is ours. You work for us. You don't work for the people. Now take this political donation and do what we tell you to do. And that's the sad part. And that's why we talk about ending this system. That's why we talk about ending this capitalist system, because in capitalism, money comes first. Remember, capital, the word capital is just another word for money. So capitalism, that means the focus is on money first. Damn everything else. That's why this system needs to go, because it is anti-human. It is capitalism is an unnatural system. Look what it's doing to our most vulnerable, who are our most traumatized, the youth among us. So let's go back to the article. So their lawyer says he not only seeks justice for the victims, but also aims to uncover systemic failures within the juvenile justice system and private entities entrusted with the care of vulnerable youth. Here's the problem with that statement. It's not a failure. It's the system is acting exactly as the way it's intended. It's not a failure. Because guess what? If they have to pay a fine, then that's just part of doing business. And that's the horrible part, is that they are willing to look the other way, allow people to be traumatized, allow people to be abused, and then they get to collect their checks. The system is not broken. It's working as it's intended. It says when girls try to speak up about ongoing abuse, sexual abuse, Milton facility staff members, including managers, would ignore or stop them through various forms of control, like the box, according to the complaint. The box is solitary confinement. That is torture. They're torturing young girls for daring to speak out against them. They're torturing minors. And everybody talks about, oh, we just need to reform the criminal justice system. No, baby, we need to completely break it down and rebuild it anew. And it needs to be something that is restorative. And also we need to have a system where everybody's material needs are met. So therefore, crimes of desperation and crimes of lack of opportunity no longer take place, because there is no desperation and there is no lack of opportunity. But you have to change the system. One of my favorite quotes is, if a flower doesn't bloom, you change the environment in which the flower grows, not the flower. Why are we punishing the flowers for not blooming when they're in a system that damages them? Why are we doing that? That's absolutely insane to me. Doesn't make any sense. Let's continue on. Says girls face discipline forced into silence. The woman abused by Parker recalls him battering her between 10 and 20 times, as detailed in the lawsuit. Parker, according to the complaint, tried to build rapport with the girls. He let them stay awake to read, talk, and color at night when they weren't supposed to. Privileges he allows so he can groom them, the complaint says. I'm going to make a statement, and some of y'all are going to hate me for it, but it is what it is. Some of y'all got a problem with a drag queen reading a book, but yet you got the guys like this who are abusing our girls in juvenile detention centers, and you guys seem to have more problems with the drag queen reading instead of these people who are in our criminal justice system abusing the girls. I said what I said. Cry to your big bone mama about it. All right. This part is going to get graphic. If you need to leave, then that's fine. But here we go. It says at night, Parker would visit the women's cell, and I'm not going to read it, but I'm going to let y'all read it. He would, according to their complaint. He's accused of threatening her with discipline if she objected to, fought, or reported the abuse. The woman recalls how if girls shared negative experiences while speaking with family on the phone, the facility's managers would step in to hang up the call. The girls were forced into silence and retaliate against when they tried to alert their loved ones or authorities of the abuse, according to the complaint. The box was one method of retaliation and used to control resident girls from reporting instances of abuse. Those who kept quiet were rewarded with special treatment by facility manager, the complaint says. See how, and this goes into question, how some people will go, well, why didn't they tell their family? Some of them tried. They tried. They were on the phone and they tried to tell their family. And then as soon as they hear them trying to tell their family, they would hang up the phone. The facility managers would hang up the phone so that they couldn't tell their family members. Does that sound like a justice system in criminal justice to you? And how many of these girls can afford lawyers? How many of these girls knew to go, I need to speak with a lawyer? And, and just a reminder, the calls from juvenile detention centers, jails, and prisons are all monitored. They are monitored. Trust me, I know, because I've had family and friends who have been incarcerated. So you have all that happening. And if you say the wrong thing, according to them, talking about the abuse that's happening there, they will hang up the phone. And then they will punish you by putting you in solitary confinement for speaking out. They will take off all your clothes, put you in a room with no toilet and no sink. And you'll have to lay on a cold floor for days, weeks, maybe even, just for speaking out against the abuse that was handed to you. So how many people didn't know? How many moms and dads that were calling because they were concerned and they were talking to their kid and their kid tried to tell them something? How many of them had no idea until their kid got out? Isn't that crazy? Let's continue. girl who fought back and was slammed against the wall. This talks about a girl that was in the shower alone. And mind you, all these girls are minors. And one of the guards tried to assault her. And when she resisted, he slammed her face against the wall so hard he broke her nose. I know a lot of moms and dads, if they found that out about that happened to their daughter, they'd be ready to catch a case. They'd be ready to go to jail. They'd be ready to go to jail right now. They'd be prepared. And yet this is happening day in and day out within our own juvenile detention centers. So it says that the women are seeking judgment. This suit is on claims includes negligence, fraudulent concealment of sexual battery, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. So that's the crazy part about all this, is that are we looking at these girls because they don't fit our perception of, what we think a young girl should be? Oh, well, she's done horrible things, or she does some bad stuff, or she's she's a nuisance, she's a delinquent. And so because of that, then we excuse the abuse that's happening. Are we going to find ourselves doing that in our head? Because once you start doing that, then in your mind, you start to say, well, maybe she deserved it. How many of y'all do that to men in your heads? Oh, so this is one of the reasons why I think this story is so important, is because we have this system that constantly is doing this to young women, girls. The reason why I keep saying girls and not young women is because if I say young women, you're going to think 19, 20, 21, 22. When in reality, I'm talking about 13, 14, 15, maybe 16-year-olds. I'm talking about girls that belong in either middle or high school. And so that's why I intentionally use the word girls, because that's what they are. It's the same thing with boys. I'm not going to use young men. I'm going to use boys, because the problem is that when we start to use young women or young men, then guess what? We start to age them older in our heads. So we start to say, well, they deserve it because they're fully functioning, fully cognitive adults in our mind. When in reality, they're not. The human brain isn't even fully developed, especially the prefrontal cortex, until the age of 25. So therefore, no, they're boys and girls. I want to share this as well, because this is also very important. Because yes, even though a lot of these young girls come from impoverished and working class backgrounds, it is also disproportionately Black and brown girls that are being subject to this. This is out of nacdl.org. So here we go. It says Black girls are 2.7 times more likely than white girls to be referred to juvenile justice and are 1.2 times more likely to be detained. Black girls are 3 times more likely to be removed from their homes and placed in state custody than white girls. Prosecutors are 20% more likely to form a petition in cases involving Black girls than in cases involving white girls. Judges consistently hand down more severe dispositions to Black girls than to white girls, even after accounting for seriousness of the offense, prior record, and age. The Georgetown Law Report argues that the perception of Black girls as less innocent and more adult may contribute to more punitive exercise of discretion by those in positions of authority, greater use of force, and harsher penalties. This adultification of Black youth, especially of Black girls, likely contributes to the disproportionate representation of Black girls who are incarcerated. According to Prison Policy Initiative, Black girls comprise 35% of the population of girls who are locked up. Latina girls account for 19%, and white girls account for 38%. That's from October of 2019. And while we're at it, we might as well say this too. Black boys and Black girls are always aged up in the perception of people. They said Tamir Rice was a man when he was only 12 years old, and he was shot and murdered by police. And the police had encountered him for less than 30 seconds before they shot and killed him. By the way, he had a toy gun. And they shot and killed him. And they said it was a man out there. He was 12. We are sexualized at a younger age, both Black boys and Black girls. We are also aged up, meaning that people in their minds, especially white people, think that, oh, we're more cognitively aware of what we're doing at that age than a white boy or white girl at that same age. When in reality, a 13-year-old Black boy and a 13-year-old Black girl is not that much different than a 13-year-old white boy or a 13-year-old white girl. But yet in our minds, we always aged them up. And so, yes, we are also overrepresented, including our girls, are overrepresented in the prison industrial complex. And so who faces that abuse? Also, there's the whole Jezebel trope, where we're overly sexualized more. You don't think that doesn't play a part as well? There's more purity assigned to white girls than it is to Black girls. Look, I'm just stating a fact. There's more purity assigned to white girls than there is to Black girls. There's more purity assigned to white women than there is to Black women. And that's part of the white supremacy, which is also coupled with capitalism. And here you go. So this is why it's so important to talk about these things, right? Because this is all part of the system that keeps us down. It keeps us at different tiers, right? Because people say, oh, we just got to talk about class. You guys got to talk about class. Yes, class is important, but also identity is important too. Because those two factor in to create what we call this system, the American system. And so, yes, it happens to young white women too, but it's disproportionate as far as our population. Black girls are what, 13% of the juvenile detention population? But yet, They're well over 30%, over 35% of those who are put in juvenile detention. Does that make any sense to you? Also, is how we perceive them in our brains as well. Let's also not forget that when it comes to young Black girls, they're also underrepresented in people who also may be neurodivergent. We also got to talk about that too, but that's a whole nother conversation. There are some Black women out there that are neurodivergent that have not been able to receive the evaluation that they absolutely need. And then we just think, oh, they're just difficult, or they're just complex, or they're just this, they're just that, they're ratchet. When in reality, they probably also neurodivergent in some way. But that's a whole nother conversation. But yes, this is happening, and this is why we talk about changing the system. And the ways we talk about changing the system is by building dual power, doing mutual aid, and also being able to focus our attention, our energies, so that we can change the system, so that we can actually protect children, especially within the system. And I also think no more public-private partnerships. No more. Because we see how they handle our young people. We see how they handle, you see how they handle also when it comes to schools, like charter schools. That's another public-private partnership that we don't talk about. So, yeah. Let me do this. Let's go to the comments in the chat. And then we shall move on. Just checking to see if I have anybody on Rockbin. Yes, we do. And we will go there first. And then we'll check on the Rumble side for any Rumble rants. And then we shall continue. So let me pop this out. Oh, and by the way, if you have not already, go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you very much for that. All right, let's get into this. All right. Thank you for this, Roger. He said, Jay, you mentioned public-private partnerships. Call them corporate government partnerships instead. Why? Because co-ops have not gotten their footing yet. So we don't know what a co-op government partnership would look like, and co-ops are private. New York State Senate just passed out its chamber to copy California law of a corporate government partnership with pharma like California to combat Trump's cuts to Medicare card money to develop generic drugs. He said, thank you for doing this story. I don't have a direct or even indirect experience with this, but it is always important that shows like yours never get so caught up in the big, broad issues that we forget the everyday people we are fighting for in the individual lives. Little peeps whose stories swept aside for the big issues like the big, beautiful bill. DM some funnies before X outage, future stories after. Okay, thank you. He also says, speaking of education debate, I know you see me tag you on X before the outage. When I was speaking to Larry, he was saying how much he loved you and said he needs to have more left people on his show. I was like, perfect, have JB come on your show. I hope he contacted you. Would love to see the education debate. Okay, so one thing, Roger, I got to tell you, but I'm not a debater. I I do not like debating. Um, it's mostly because I'm terrible at debates. My brain melts into mush during debates. I don't like doing it. Um, I'm just not good at it. Discussions, yeah. I mean, pushback a little bit, yeah. Especially when done in a kind way. But I'm not a debater. But you know, if when it comes to the facts, things like that, having a discussion about it, I'm definitely down for that. Larry has always been, a class act. Larry has always been really cool. Um, we may not have, we may have some disagreements on things, but there's a lot of overlapping agreement that we have. So I would definitely like to come back on Larry's show to have, the conversation. Uh, but I wouldn't classify it as a debate. It would probably just be a discussion because typically, especially with online debates, you don't move the needle when it comes to the other person's understanding. Like it's almost like they have their stance in their head, and then no matter what facts you give them, they're going to walk away still with the same opinion that they had before, even if presented with facts. Um, and so that's why I kind of stay away from the online like debate thing because it's like, who does it help? Now, it could help the audience, but it also requires that there's no cult of personality either. Because when you have a cult of personality, then the audience will be kind of the same, right? It's like no matter what's said, they will side with that person, even though the facts, may prove, them wrong. And so I've seen this many times. So that's the only thing. But I'm definitely down to have a discussion with Larry. He's a chill guy. He's a really cool guy. He's a smart guy, definitely for sure. Um, so yeah, I'd definitely be down for that. Larry's a really great guy. I like Larry. So thank you very much for that. Let me see. Did you write something else? Hang on. He said, I meant discussion, not a formal debate. Excellent. I am screen recording this and sending it to him. But when you get a chance after the show, watch that link. And he talked about it to get his perspective. Okay. Thank you very much for that, Roger. Appreciate it. All right. So let me check to see if we have any Rumble rants, and then we'll get to the rest of the chat. Yes, we do have a Rumble rant. Okay. Let me enlarge. Oh gosh. All right. I'm going to have to clear something up here. Okay. All right. So, Stoop Sign, thank you very much for the Rumble rant. I didn't know James Fauntleroy was an RBN host. I love that song Nate by Vince Staples you produced. Here's the thing I need people to understand, and I'm going to say this very loudly so that everybody knows. There are two James Fauntleroys, right? One is a famous producer that I think lives on the West Coast. That's not me. And that James Fauntleroy has worked with the likes of like a Justin Timberlake. He's worked with Bruno Mars. He's worked with a lot of famous, people, right? That's not me. We're two different things. I'm James B. Fauntleroy, hence Jaybe Font, right? And so therefore, I appreciate it, but that is not me. It's just like you have two Michael Jordans. There's Michael Jordan, there's Michael B. Jordan. See? Difference. So I understand that some people see the name James Fauntleroy and they automatically think, oh, is this guy the producer? Because I remember when I had a Facebook page, people coming in, all the time. I love your music. I love your music. And I'm like, wrong guy. Nope, wrong guy. It's like I remember we had, well, back, when I was religious, we had a guy that came to our church. His name was Mike Jackson. Michael Jackson. But of course he wasn't the Michael Jackson, right? But that's why he just called himself Mike Jackson. And so it's the same thing, right? We just happen to share the same name. Now, could we be related? Yeah, because I mean, I'm willing to bet all Fauntleroys are related in some way, because there was a Fauntleroy plantation. Uh, there's a Fauntleroy plantation in Essex County, Virginia. So we all probably came descended from the same plantation, right? But ultimately, you're wrong guy. I appreciate it, but I'm not a producer. Though I wish I could produce music, because that'd be kind of cool, but I'm not that guy. But thank you. Ah, let me see. Is there any other? Uh, okay. Let me see. Is there any other Rumble rants? No. Okay. Alrighty. So let's go into the rest of the chat. Oh my goodness. All right. All right. So Jacqueline's in the chat saying, "Hey everybody, hey Jacqueline, good to see you." Global says People's Assembly for Peace and Justice rally in Dayton, Ohio is live. Oh, okay, very nice. All right. Let me see. Jay says, "Looking dapper as always." Thank you very much. Let me see. Yes, Jacqueline says the criminal injustice system. Yeah, that's honestly how I see it. Let me see. Um, Thank you very much, Bad Wolf. Appreciate it. Let me see. Jacqueline says this is disgusting. These are children we're talking about. Men and women in positions of responsibility and authority are treating children like this. Yeah, it shouldn't be, but that's the way it is in this system. Um, Jay says these people drawn to these low paid jobs caring for vulnerable people either have the best or worst intentions. Yeah. And the thing is like, if you're tasked with overseeing the health and safety of someone, number one, I think that you should be paid much more than what you're being paid. And this also goes to people who are nursing assistants and like nursing homes and stuff like that. I honestly don't think they get paid enough. But also, it should be, you know, the people who just don't care about the people who they're tasked with, you know, protecting and keeping safe. They need to be vetted much better, so that we don't have people like that. But also, the system just needs to be changed in a way where we have, the best of us caring for these people while giving the best pay, so that they are um, able to do their job without having to worry. So a thriving wage should be one of the first things. Oh my God, Mouse. Oh, that's deep. Wow. I'm sorry. Let me see. Harlan's Media. Good to see you, Kit. Thank you so very much. Nice to see you in the chat. Harlan's Media doing the hard work out there while recommending great deep dish pizza, by the way. Speaking of deep dish pizza, when I get to travel again, I'm taking my behind to Chicago. Let me see. Camp Cat, thank you so very much. All right. Richard Dacker says Khazarian mafia cult controls judiciary. Khazarian. Penal government spanking. You may have heard Freemasons, however, Khazarian mafia are the Satanists. Khazarian. That's going over my head, but thanks for the comment. Let me see. Let me see. Good to see Soul Construct in here. Good to see you. All right. We have Cesanak says, I'm late. What facility? So let me make sure I read it again. It's the Gulf Coast Treatment Center. It's closed back in 2012, but it was called the Gulf Coast Treatment Center. And it was owned by Universal Health Services. And Universal Health Services is owned by BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. So let me put the link in the chat so you guys can read it yourself. Alrighty. Hobo Rody says, kind of got to scrape the stains from the bottom of society's ish bucket to staff the prisons and law enforcement rackets. Not smart to expect good results from the incentive structure in place. Yeah. And is all definitely a vicious cycle. Stoop Sign says sick bastards. Agreed. Dabby Dab says child predators working in juvenile detention facilities. Shocking, but not surprising. Yeah. Hobarodi says outlawing slavery will be necessary to start change. So much corruption, so much crime. Yeah. And the thing is, like, we have not outlawed slavery outright. We only do it as an exception, as punishment for a crime. I was sent to Baptist Reform School in Mississippi. Some other girls were abandoned there, or that's what they were told. They lied to the parents too. That's, gosh, that sucks. Bender says empty jails won't make them money. This is why we got to get rid of those, that corporate government partnership, because that's what sucks. You can't have that. Let me see. Go to somebody who I haven't spoken to yet. Let me see. Violin says the worst predators rise into power in this system. Yep. Mike says APAC and the prison industrial complex. Don't forget J Street. And yes, Nico Wicca says this is the reason why people don't want to visit the U.S. anymore. They don't trust the vile people controlling U.S. state governments and prisons. Yeah, look. If you're outside the United States and you don't want to come here, I completely understand. Hell, if I was in another country, I wouldn't come here. I'd be afraid to, just wait for the revolution and then come. Because this is crazy, man. By the way, Professor Richard Wolff did a great segment on democracy at work. of Reform versus Revolution. I highly recommend you guys actually watch that. And it was it makes you think, but at the same time is it's eye opening, and it kind of for some of us, for many of us on the left, it kind of reaffirms why it is better to be a revolutionary for the most part. So I highly recommend you guys watch that. Um, Cheddar Steve says, "Yo, they're gonna charge Carmelo as an adult. Free Carmelo." Yeah, I saw about Carmelo Anthony. Here's the thing I'll say about that. If they're charging him with first degree murder, that means that they have to find without a reasonable doubt about that that murder was premeditated and intentional. If they can't, Carmelo walks, which means they have a higher threshold to convict. Given the facts and the evidence, it's going to be a larger likelihood that he may walk, because now they have to go over this huge hurdle of proving that it was premeditated, that he planned on doing this, before he, went to the track meet. So that's going to be an interesting trial to see. Let me see. All right, so I'm going to head on to the next one. Let me see. We'll just do one more. And Rich says they are deeply rooted in U.S. government. They are the face of the they're the face of institutionalized punishment. They are too connected and powerful to remove, restrict, or replace them. All right. So oh. Oh my goodness. I'll get to that in a second. Okay. Let's move on. Actually, first, let's do a shout out to the patrons and then we can move on. So, shout out to all the patrons on Patreon. Without you guys, we would not be able to do this type of work. You guys make this absolutely possible, which we are deeply grateful here at Revolutionary Blackout Network. See, one of the things that we try to do, especially, is to make it so that those of us here on this network, what we want to do is to encourage you to take the power that you have and utilize it in order to create a more equal, equitable, and egalitarian society. And by doing so, then you can actually change this country for the better, because the politicians and these corporations don't give a damn about us, but we give a damn about us. And so the safest hands are still our own. And so I think that it is the best thing for us to do is to continue to inform you, and you wield that power as the people. So thank you very much for being contributors to this, and we just want to thank you for allowing us to be able to deliver you guys the news and also encourage you guys to do more mutual aid and building dual power out there. So thank you very much. So let's get into the next one. So we're going to talk about this one. Beware of this trick. This is going to be a trick that is being done by politicians. And I think this is absolutely necessary to talk about, especially because you have this trick being done here in Orlando, Florida. And so I think it is absolutely necessary for us to get into this, because we have to, we have to be able to discern what politicians are doing. We have to look at what they do and not just what they say. And so this is very important. So let's get into this. So as you all know, that I live here in Orlando, Florida. And Orlando is a Democrat-run city within a Democrat-run county. So Orlando is ran by a Democrat, Dyer, who's the mayor. And the county that it sits in is Orange County, which is ran by the uh, the mayor of the county being Jerry Demings. And so it's, you know, a Democrat city in a Republican state. And you would think that because of that, then there's leniency, especially when it comes to things like homelessness, housing, things like that. While in some isolated cases that may be true, there's a trick that's being pulled by politicians. It could be done by Republican politicians, it could be done by Democrat politicians, but this is what I like to call the priorities trick. And so I'm going to get into this article first, and then I'm going to tell you my issues with it. It's going to sound kind of crazy at first. I'll be honest with you. Like, Jaybe, what are you talking about? This sounds like a great idea. But stick with me. I have a point to make. So here we go out of Orlando Weekly. It says Orlando approves contractor for the canopy under I-4 project. I-4 is Interstate 4. So that is really one of the main arteries that goes from east to west or west to east, in Central Florida. So it goes from Tampa through Orlando to Daytona. And so, you have Tampa, which is around I-75. And then you have I-95, which is on the East Coast, going through Daytona. And so I-4 connects those two interstates as well. So you have that. And which is also known as the I-4 corridor. This is also where you have Orlando. This is also where you have Disney nearby. You have Universal nearby. You have all these different huge attractions that are within the I-4 corridor that a lot of people visit, especially huge, entertainment capital, of the state, if not the United States, because you have these huge theme parks. And then on top of that, it takes you east to west. So you can either go to the Gulf of Mexico and swim there in the Gulf, or you can go to the East Coast and swim in the Atlantic Ocean. You can go either way. And you're either from Orlando, you're either give or take an hour and a half away from the beach, or you're 45 minutes away from the beach going the other direction. And so that's what the I-4 corridor is. So here is the story. It says Orlando has made one new step towards development of its ambitious I-4 park concept. The city approved the contractor, Whiting Turner Contracting Company, ahead of a start of construction on the park project to be built underneath I-4, as reported by Orlando Business Journal. The proposed urban park, dubbed the Canopy, is part of Orlando's Under I-4 project, through which the city seeks to repurpose infrastructure underneath the interstate and transform the area into a nearly 10-acre gathering space. The city says it plans to build sports complexes, play areas, and performative spaces, as well as pedestrian-friendly walkways and bike paths. Construction was expected to start in early 2025 and is now set to be completed by August 31st, 2027, according to the city. It says development of the canopy directly correlates with Mayor Buddy Dyer's ever-ambitious DTO action plan, that's Downtown Orlando Action Plan, an outline for the more sustainable and walkable downtown. The plan also contains an expansion of Lake Eola, the launch of Ride DTO, and the extension of sidewalks and other public spaces in the area. Under the I-4 project will be located between West Washington and West Church Streets and surrounded by South Garland and South Huey Avenues. The canopy will replace what is previously a parking area as part of the ongoing efforts towards the change. Orlando late last year launched a parking initiative pilot program that introduced 2 new parking and visitor drop-off locations downtown. Now, here is the pictures that is supposed to be. So if you can see underneath, this is the overpass of I-4. If you see at the top, that's the overpass of I-4. And then they built a park underneath the overpass, right? So that's what it's supposed to look like. Here's another rendering, artist rendering. Here at the top, you see the overpass there, but underneath it's supposed to be green spaces, right? Notice they put a lot of Black people in here, right? And then see, there you go. This is another third artist rendering of what it will look like, right? So it looks nice, right? Green spaces, walkable areas, making it into a more walkable city, things like that. I like that concept, making it more walkable, more green spaces, things like that. But here's my issue with this. Okay. This is going to cost us a lot of money. That money, while we're building these green spaces and walkable spaces, while good, we still have a homeless problem. We still have a huge homeless problem here in Orlando. By the way, our population is exploding right now. You got people coming in from Illinois, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire. You have all these people coming, especially from either up north in the Midwest or the Northeast. You have people coming down here in droves. And guess what's happening? The housing prices are skyrocketing. They're going up. And because the housing prices are going up, guess who's getting priced out? The locals, people like me, people like many of my neighbors, were getting priced out because what I like to call intrastate gentrification, or national gentrification. That's what I like to call it. So basically meaning that the people who are, have a higher cost of living, so they're moving down here because the cost of living is lower. Well, they're moving here, but then guess what? The property owners, the real estate developers, and all the other people, they raise their prices because they see you coming. And so then they raise their prices so that they can make extra money. But it prices us, the locals, out. So then guess what? We now are on the verge of being homeless. We can't afford food. We can't afford our light bill because some of y'all from Boston and New York City and Chicago and all that are coming out here because you guys are trying to find some place that's more affordable, but yet now it's pricing us out. And it's a vicious cycle that happens within the capitalist system, right? And so a lot more of us are becoming homeless. And so here's the issue that politicians do, is that they will present something that is seemingly nice, right? Seemingly nice or innocuous. But then when it comes to the weightier things that they need to do, it'll be almost like a bait and switch. Well, see, we're creating more green spaces. See, we're creating more walkable areas, but you still got the homeless problem. That's what Buddy Dyer's doing. And so this money could have went towards alleviating the homeless problem, building, let's say, It could be a city-owned residential building that has a housing first program where you house people who are out on the streets. It doesn't matter their standing when it comes to mental health, right? Unless it's like severe, then, of course they need treatment. You put them in a treatment center. But no matter their mental health standing, no matter if they're on addicted substances, you put them in housing first. Because if you put them in housing first, what does it do? It helps them mentally so that it's easier to treat the mental health issues, and it makes it easier to treat the substance abuse issues because they're no longer under the traumatizing effects of being homeless. Because that's what housing first does. But because you're making it so that they have to jump through all these hoops in order to get housing, you're making housing the goal when housing should be the starting point in order to achieve something better. So instead of doing that, instead of buying a building, right? The city could just buy a building and own it, right? So that the people who are unhoused can have upward mobility. Instead of doing that, then no, they're just going to make it more walkable cities, because Orlando is a city that caters to tourists. It doesn't cater to the residents. It caters to all of you who don't live here. They build for you, not for us. I'm going to say that again. Orlando builds for you, not for us. So therefore, this is why our bus system doesn't run 24 hours. Oh, the Lynx bus system, it don't run 24 hours. The last bus, I think, is like the number 8. And I think it stops between like 1 on a weeknight. I think it stops between like 1 and 1:30 in the morning. And it doesn't start back up until between 4:30 and 5 a.m. It doesn't start back up again. So it's not 24 hours, even though we need it to be 24 hours, because we have a lot of places that operate 24 hours now. And a lot of these workers, they need transportation. But instead, who gets that money for transportation? It gets the Ubers and the Lyfts and the cab companies. Because guess what? When it's 2:00 in the morning and you're just getting off your shift, well, the buses aren't running anymore. So you have to spend that extra money to get an Uber, to get a Lyft, just to get home, which a lot of us can't afford. Right? And so this is why you still kind of need a car in Orlando, right? Because the public transportation is not as efficient. That's just one example of Orlando being a city for tourists, not for residents. And so it's like a bait and switch. It's like, we're going to focus on doing this nice thing, but we're not going to do the more important, weightier things. Our priorities are going to be out of whack. And that's what, it's not just Democrats. Republicans will do it too. Like, for instance, let me give you an example of Republicans doing it. Donald Trump is doing this right now. He's focused so much on the social issues, on the culture war, so that you don't focus on what he's not doing for you materially. So you go, oh my goodness, he's getting rid of the woke stuff. Okay, but what about your rent? What about your electric bill? What about the price of groceries? What is he doing for you there? Because tariffs ain't going to do jack squat, but make your stuff more expensive. So that's Trump taking something that you think is good, and then he switches it for something that's more. He takes something that you think is good and switches it in place of something that's more pressing. You voted for Trump based on the economy, but he's not working on the economy. He's working on social issues. Buddy Dyer, who is a Democrat, is not focusing on the homeless issue, which he should be. He's focused on making more green spaces, which I'm all for, right? I'm all for it because we need, number one, we need to fight this climate change, right? We need more walkable cities. I fully agree with that. But my thing is like, this is a triage situation. We got to focus on the more weightier things first. Why am I going to focus more on somebody that has a cough and a sneeze when I have somebody on my hands that literally is suffering from a hernia, or somebody that has a compound fracture? That compound fracture in that person's arm or a leg needs to be treated first before that person that got the sniffles. Why? Because that person with a compound fracture probably is at greater risk for infection, greater risk for death than the person who got the sniffles. It's a triage situation. So therefore, I'm going to treat the person that's the most serious, who needs the help the most first. Who needs the help the most first in our city? It is the unhoused. It is the homeless that need the help first. And yet we're trying to put them in buses? Buses? Yes. I talked about this. I think it was it on my channel? Yes, it was on my channel. Talked about them trying to put them on buses instead of putting it in actual housing, real housing. Let me share this with you, because people are like, wait, what do you mean put them on buses? I'll share with you the article. This is some BS. It is horrible, right? Here we go. Orlando set to approve $3 million deal to shelter homeless people in retrofitted buses. Meaning they're going to put homeless people in temporary Greyhound buses, and it's only going to be about 40 of them. 40 people, not buses, people that are able to go on those 2 retrofitted buses. $3 million for that. When in reality, could that $3 million have gone to buying a building, creating housing units, putting these people in permanent housing, not temporary, permanent housing? Because, and let's say they're in there and they are just chilling. They're just chilling for 6 months. Okay. All right. Let them chill for 6 months. Oh, but they need to get a job. Maybe they shouldn't have to get a job just yet, because they have to get used to, acclimated to being housed again. Their mind has to switch so that the disease of despair goes away. So then they start to get to a point where it's like, I need to do something. And then they're like, okay, well, let me go get a job. And then that's when you have the housing services that are able to help with mental health, substance abuse, and job placement. They're there to go, okay, you're ready to look for a job? Okay, come on, let's go. We got some places for you. When you're ready, we work at your pace. Because the value of a human being should not be on how much they produce. The value of the human being should be inherent because they are a human being. I said what I said, cry to your big bone mama about it. I don't care. The value of a human being is that they are a human being, not because of how much they produce. And so what if they don't work for 6 to 9 months after getting housing? Okay. All right. Okay. But they're living off of us. But the billionaires are living off of us. And they're spending way more money than somebody who's unhoused, who doesn't do anything for 6 months and just chills out for a little while. They're spending way more money of our money than these people are. So no, I don't accept that. And by the way, some of these people who are very rich, they're also on substances. Yeah. And they also have mental health issues. You mean to tell me that Elon doesn't have mental health issues? Come on now. It's okay when it's somebody who's rich, but when somebody who's unhoused, it's not acceptable. Anyways, so this is one of the articles that I had touched on a few weeks back, right, on my channel. Is that they want to retrofit these buses, right? And here's point. It says a point in time count conducted last year found 105% rise in the number of people in the Tri-County region over the year prior who lacked shelter. Altogether, volunteers counted 2,776 people who lacked stable housing. According to Martha Are, CEO of the Homeless Services Network of Central Florida, a nonprofit that conducted the count, there has been a considerable rise in specifically in older and elderly people who have been forced out of their homes. Older and elderly people. I'm going to tell you something right now. In doing mutual aid, you know who is the greatest group of people who I've encountered who are unhoused, who are homeless out there? Number one, it's men. Number two, it's Black men, Black American men. Some of them are veterans. And you want to put them in buses? And then you want to spend all that money for a green space underneath the highway instead of helping these people who a lot of them are out in the streets because of something that is not really their fault. It's not our fault that the minimum wage hasn't kept up with inflation. It's not our fault, and it's not their fault that the housing prices are skyrocketing. It's not their fault. It's not their fault that the Social Security retirement doesn't pay a living income so that people don't have to worry about being out on the street. It's not their fault. And yet here we go. We make it so that it's nearly impossible for them to survive. And so this is one of the biggest issues that I have with these politicians. They will bait and switch. They'll do something seemingly good, but they'll do that seemingly good thing in place of what is more important, more weighty. Like, for instance, people talk about, oh, well, we just got to lower the drug prices. Okay, fine. That's a step in the right direction. But honestly, I think we need to take over and nationalize the pharmaceutical industry. That'll get rid of that. We won't have to negotiate shit if we actually own the pharmaceutical industry collectively. Won't have to negotiate anything. And it's not like they're doing the R&D themselves. No. The R&D is actually being done in our public universities. So then they actually put a patent on it, and then they get to keep the profits. Is that fair? No, because if it's our public universities and colleges that are doing the R&D, then we collectively as the public should keep it. So some comrades also had some things to say that I shared this story with. Let me go into my phone. Let me see. Okay. So I shared this story, and so one of my comrades said, she said, I love this. I love the idea of building parks and public gathering spaces. But this is akin to buying expensive new designer furniture when you don't have enough money to pay the rent. Even in Democrat run liberal cities, the needs of the most vulnerable members of our community are overlooked and brushed aside. That's one of the main points. Another one is my comrade and homie, Katie Lewis. Shout out to you. He said, the thing is not addressing the homeless issue makes the development of green spaces and public parks moot. Either the homeless are displaced or they make residents in the park, which will have an impact on public safety to where more police will be near or in the area. See, here's the thing. I don't know if people realize this, but here in Orlando, those areas where they want to make those public parks, well, it's literally like a parking area. So it's kind of like the divider between right around, it's right near like the Orange Avenue area. It kind of divides, you know, and especially like if you're like near the Amway, I'm sorry, the Kia Center. If you go to Kia Center, you're going towards downtown, you have I-4, and then underneath it, you have all these parking areas, right? Well, they want to replace that with the green space, right? But in that same area, if you walk around there pretty much almost any time of day, there are unhoused homeless people that are on the sidewalks that are either sleeping, chilling out, just right there, right? They may even have their carts with all their stuff and everything. Well, now, guess what? This green space is being used as an anti-homelessness infrastructure so that when they create this green space, then, oh, police can come in and go, hey, you guys can't be here. We're going to have to arrest you and take you down to either the jail or incarcerate you, right? We're going to have to incarcerate you for being out here because it's public safety. When in reality, instead of having to build that green space, which I think they should do afterwards, house the homeless first. Then after that, then yeah, go ahead, build a green space. I agree with that. But it's about the priorities, right? It's the triage. And OPD, they're notorious, man. One of my comrades, she says, this is like buying new running shoes when you haven't put a cast on your broken leg. And this is why I appreciate my comrades, because sometimes they'll put things in ways in which explains it way better than I could. So that's the thing. Are we going to prioritize the people who are the most vulnerable so that we can make sure they're taken care of first, and then we can continue on and doing what needs to be done? Or are we going to just like never mind them and then do these things that are seemingly kind of good, but then we still end up exploiting and degrading the most vulnerable members of our society? You know, it's kind of like building painting the intersection with Black Lives Matter when you haven't done anything materially for Black people, or you haven't gave us reparations to those of us who are freedmen. So therefore, it's like, what good is that sign on the intersection going to do for us? It ain't doing jack squat. So why are you putting it there? Because you haven't done a damn thing for us materially. Priorities, baby, priorities. The problem is that they get to get away with it. So then they can say, oh, we did this thing. It's the kneeling and kensei cloth. And by the way, these green spaces aren't really for us. It's for the tourists. It's for the people that come here. Like, for instance, the people who come here to see like the soccer games at the Orlando Soccer Stadium is for them and the rich yuppies, either the rich yuppies that live in 55 West or the rich yuppies that live out there in Windermere and Isleworth, or the rich people that live in the Delaney area, and they come out here because they actually have season tickets to the soccer team, or they have season tickets for the Orlando Magic, and they get to watch the Orlando Magic play courtside, right? Or for the concerts that come, right? Let's say Taylor Swift is coming to concert and she's performing at the Kia Center. It's for them. So then once they get out and once they're walking to their car or whatever, they don't have to worry about encountering homeless people. Now they get to walk through a nice little green space, which most of us, we're working so much that we can't even enjoy. And then our neighbors that are unhoused, that are homeless, well, they're chased out of there because, of course, now that it's more nicer, then they can't be around there because they're trying to make sure to beautify the city because they call Orlando the city beautiful, right? And so they sweep the unhoused people under the rug so that, out of sight, out of mind. And so that's really the point. That's one of the tricks that politicians will play on you. And they'll play that day in and day out, all the time. So be aware of the politicians and what they decide to do and who they avoid helping. And be aware of them treating symptoms instead of the underlying cause. Because that's what our politicians do now. They treat symptoms. If you have the flu, or let's say you have a bad cold, right? Or just a bad virus. And it comes with like the stuffy nose, the sniffing, the sneezing, the coughing, all that stuff. I could put Vicks Vapor Rub on your chest all day long, right? I can give you tissues to blow your nose, right? I can give you all that. I can give you some chicken noodle soup. But what am I doing to actually treat the underlying cause, which could be a virus? Am I giving you an antiviral in order to combat the virus? Or if you have a bacterial infection, am I giving you an antibiotic to combat the bacteria, the bad bacteria that's in your body? Why am I just treating the symptoms? And that's what these politicians do, both Democrat and Republicans. This is why we talk about leaving in both parties, because they will treat the symptoms, but they will never treat the underlying cause. And then once you treat the symptoms, guess what? The underlying cause is still there, which means that the symptoms always come back. This is why building mutual aid and building dual power and coming together as a community is so important, because only we can treat the underlying cause together. So let's get started. All right. Thank you very much for staying for that segment. Go ahead and give the like to the stream. Appreciate it very much. Let's go into the chats. So let's start off with the Rockman chat. I'm gonna read this joke first because this joke it is hilarious. All right, so thank you for this one, Roger. He said there was a guy at my old job whose name is Rick James. After so many people saying, I'm Rick James, but he changed his name to Richard. He said, bro, we are operating on the same frequency. The stuff that I sent you yesterday after the X outage of my suggestion for future show addresses housing and outlines the solutions. We must go further than housing first and speak upon decommodified housing. Orlando Public Bank, like any other public bank, can be used to construct decommodified housing. Here's the local CBI I'd run. He said, one, 50% of the housing market in each country must be decommodified by removing housing from speculative market and exploring alternative models like community land trusts, state ownership and control, as well as limited equity cooperatives where residents rather than corporations, private equity groups, and real estate owns and controls housing. Well maintained, state of the art, reliable, and responsive within a week when it comes to attending tenants' needs. Rent paid will be based on 20% of their monthly net income, not monthly gross income, regardless of income, and will be collected on a per tenant, not per apartment basis. Two, 25% of tenants must make below $50,000. Within that half of them must make 25,000 minus. Number three, 25% of tenants must make $50,000 to $100,000. Four, 25% of tenants must make $100,000 to $150,000. Five, 25% of tenants must make $150,000 to $200,000, allowing housing to be in a perpetual state of affordability when the owner wishes to sell for the new value, then having the government pick up the paying for 50% of its appraisal value, while the new owner takes out a mortgage on the other 50%. He said those who fall under number three and number four will be allowed a tax write-off, while at the same time, those who live in commodified housing in the area who has decommodified housing in the neighborhood, their property value will increase faster than those who don't. Yeah, like I said, your with this would be used from the Orlando Public Bank using tax deposits, cell towers, property sales, businesses. Yes, decommodified big pharma. New York State Senate just passed out its chamber a bill going to lower chamber assembly. Now that emulates what California law does, allowing for corporate pharma government partnerships to offer generic life-saving drugs at a cheaper cost. For now, remember those companies are shareholder owned. Why are we not writing a citizen ballot initiative amendment for the government to offer its own government alternative to pharmaceutical industry by investing in public in infrastructure to create and expand research and development teams at state, city, universities, along with other public institutions to create generic free life-saving drugs, which Big Pharma already does anyway. Then, once there has been a breakthrough, it will be introduced and offered to the public free of charge, and that no one is bound to take the government alternative drugs. Humans will not be used as involuntary guinea pigs to be experimented on without their knowledge. New drugs will not be released until after it is thoroughly gone through several test trials to make sure that it is safe for public to take. It says 50% of countries in each state, not 50% of countries. Oh, I think it meant 50% of counties in each state, not 50% of countries in each state. Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Thank you very much for that, Roger. And let me check to see if we have any Rumble rants. Uh, Looks like we're good on the Rumble side. Okay. Thank you very much for that. All right. Let's get to the rest of the chat. And then we can head on out. Rich says, thank you, JB Font and Kit Kat, for helping us cope with this insanity. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Let me see. So, Cheddar Steve says, and the rest of the country needs to get with California and allow shoplifting up to $900. We are owed that. Why not just lower the prices of everything? Make the cost of living a lot better for people. Um, Rich says, while Florida's appeal as a desirable destination remains, the challenges of affordability, insurance costs, and natural disasters are driving many residents to seek new opportunities elsewhere. That is true. A lot of us who have been here for a while are like, we are sick and tired of the BS. Let me see. Jacqueline says, sounds like this park place is strictly meant to attract the tourists, as if Universal and Disney World isn't enough. No, it's not enough because they're trying to bring in more people. Sensei says American voters allow too much government power into every aspect of our lives. We are all slaves. They can jail and fine you and your children for missing 15 days of school. Americans are not free. Vicky Adams says housing must be the starting point. JB, I agree. Let's see. Go up here. Okay, so Achicario or is it Achiario? Says an Uber Lyft is expensive, so you lose a day's worth just getting home. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, Stasenok says yes, a main house or community center with a gym and a kitchen and a garden. Yeah, I mean something like that. It doesn't even have to be anything that's like over the top. Like, okay, so when I first moved out, I was 18, right? And I lived in a studio apartment. Studio apartment. It was basically one room, and it had a small kitchen. The stove and the oven were literally like this wide, right? It wasn't very big, but it was enough for me. And the stove had four burners and it had an oven, right? And then I had a microwave, I had a full size fridge, right? In the kitchen, right? Then I had my bathroom, then I had plenty of closet space, and it was great. That was right for me, right? Um, why couldn't we do that for unhoused people, right? Why can't we have that for them? We can do units just like that, you know? Let me see. Marlowe World says new mayor in San Francisco is launching a project that is all sidewalk power washing and street cleaning. Every other YouTube commercial keeps telling me. Hmm. Yeah, Vicky. Yeah, buses. In fact, you know what? Let me put the link in the chat for you guys. Yeah, this is happening in Orlando, and don't be surprised if they do this in other cities. Instead of housing people in actual buildings, they want to use buses. Nicolika says making commoners being treated as workers that waste so much of their time, money, and sanity for billionaires, not for themselves, to make a healthy society where everyone's well-being matters. Mm-hmm. Not just billionaires. All right, thank you very much. The iridescent dragonfly says everything you're talking about had already happened in Seattle for decades. And yet they're still fighting for a livable wage, too. Rich says the estimated wait for a mental health care appointment for veterans can still be as long as 45 days. That's because the VA is not well funded like it should be. Also, the VA has been under a hiring freeze for years. Trust me, I know somebody that works for the VA. They've been under a hiring freeze. And all because they want to cut spending, right? Instead of actually funding the VA very, well. They rather cut that instead of cutting money to the military industrial complex, which created our veterans in the first place. Let me see. Adrian says solidarity from uh, Aotearoa, New Zealand. Hello from New Zealand. Nice to have you. Wow, on the other side of the planet. I guess it's good evening to you or good morning. All right. Roger says random thought. Whatever happened to Bubba Sparks? I don't know. I have no idea. That's a good question. I'm actually kind of curious about that now. Wardy said I saw Bubba a couple of years ago rapping on some other country rapper's song. Okay. Cool. All right. So while we are here, let me see. Yep. Oh, Stoopstein said Bubba Sparks had a drug problem. A lot of people have substance abuse issues, but those substance abuse issues that people have are typically, a medical issue, and we need to start treating substance abuse issues as medical issues, more. And we have to get to the point where we start making it less stigmatized and say, well, yeah, people have substance abuse issues, they need help. I think we undertreat mental health. But part of it is because we try to get people to accept an unjust and incongruent system, because this capitalist system is incongruent with humanity. And so that's part of what happens within mental health, is we try to get people to accept or to deal with this system instead of actually trying to change the system so that people don't have to deal with it. So, all right. So I am going to be heading on out. I think it is good. We are now at the 2-hour mark. And I would like to thank everybody for, tuning in. Smoke 'em or the weed says, shout out to the Black Panther Party for self-defense. Yes, absolutely. They are a beautiful group of people who have been leaders in what we should be doing as people. Them, the Black Liberation Army as well. So thank you very much. All right. So if you guys have not already, I am going to be live on my channel this Tuesday. I'm trying to remember if I have any guests. Oh, Jaybe, what I have. So yes. So this Tuesday, I'll be having on Andy Ellis under the Green Party. As you guys know, Westmore has become under fire for denying a reparations study bill, but he also has not been pushing for actual reparations within Maryland at all. You guys remember, Maryland is a southern state, and so people like Wes Moore should be pushing for reparations within the state, but he has not, especially with Baltimore being a black city. And so but you have Andy Ellis that is has reparations for descendants of slaves in his platform. So I'll be having a discussion with him. He's running under the Green Party. He'll be joining me this Tuesday for that. So if you guys would like to tune in to my channel, then we will be talking about that with Andy Ellis. So it's going to be a great conversation. Also, I don't think Savvy is live tonight, but be sure to tune in to her on Tuesday. And then also, I think, let me see, either Nick or Rome, I think, has a show tomorrow. I don't see anything on the docket until Thursday. Thursday, he will be live with DD Geopolitics. So if Nick goes live for anything, be sure to keep an eye out. Also, if you guys have not, also please make sure to join the mailing list just in case. Revolutionaryblackout.substack.com, so you guys can get those notifications if in case a stream comes up, so you guys won't have to depend on the YouTube algorithm to let you guys know if we're live, because sometimes it kind of slips up a little bit. Okay. And also please make sure to check that if you're still subscribed, because sometimes they think that they're trying to clean things up, and in reality you're actually subscribed. So please make sure to check to see if you're still subscribed as well. Okay. Sorry. So all right. So thank you very much to everybody for tuning in. Do I have? I'm trying to see if I had a closing. Trying to see if I had. Oh, you know what? I should play this video. You know what? I am. I'm gonna end it with this. So there is a particular video that I ended with on my channel last week, but I thought it was great. I think that it's apropos for me to play it here. This one is about dark money. And so I think you guys are going to enjoy this. But yes, thank you very much to everybody. Water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Do all the things if you got them, right? Please make sure to let the kids know that not only that you care, but do actions to show them that you care. Support them, because remember, they are also part of our community. They are also part of us. So make sure to do what you can for them. That could be also a form of mutual aid, giving kids an outlet, right? Do what you can. And also, please avoid these tricks by these politicians. Just leave both parties and focus on the policy, focus on the actions more than the words. Focus on the policies and make policy your love language. And also pay keen attention, especially to local politics and ballot initiatives. All right. I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you guys for watching, and forehead kisses. You guys take care, and I will see y'all later. All right.
Hey. Hi, what can I do for you?
My friends and I want to donate some money to our boy over there.
Yeah, for sure. And how much money?
Unlimited. Yeah.
Unlimited money.
Yeah, just to show our support.
Okay. Obviously, you're going to need one of these. Yeah, no, totally. So you know the rules. You can only spend this on independent things like ads supporting him.
For sure. Yeah.
You can't ask him for anything in return.
Oh, of course. No, we would never talk. We don't talk.
And you have to show me the names of all your donors.
Like everyone who donated to the bucket.
Yeah, just so we know like who's trying to influence him and what their agenda might be. You know, you could be from a foreign country.
Oh, yeah. No, that would be insane.
So can I see your donors?
Definitely. Yes. He's right over here.
That's your donor?
Mm-hmm.
That's a bag.
It's a bag. Yeah. It's a basically money goes into the bag, and then it goes from the bag to the bucket. So my donor is the bag.
Okay, but who's putting money in the bag?
I don't have to tell you that legally. There's actually there's a special loophole for bags like this. So
Who was that?
who was that? I don't know who that was.
All right, this is ridiculous. I have to get rid of this loophole and bring transparency back to our elections.
So you're not gonna do anything?
Oh yeah, nothing. I mean, who do you think gave me this job?
Oh,